In our modern world, in our modern society, there are so many things that we need to be wary of and be scared of. But as a man living in the year 2025, there is one trait that I have and one fear that I have that trumps everything else that could possibly be had in the entire world. Fear of heights? Fuck off. Fear of death? this is worse than death. Okay? The fear of being called a predator is possibly the most encapsulating fear for young men, and really any man with half an ounce of self-respect, right? That is our biggest fear. That fear, especially, is at its forefront when you are a man who works with children, particularly young children, like I do. When I am at work with these young children, I make every effort possible to make sure that there is no room for doubt that I am not attracted to them, okay? Let me make it abundantly clear. I am so adamantly not attracted to these children, okay? And I know that sounds bad, but I feel like this is something that needs to be said now. There are certain realities that I, as a man who works with children, has to face, right? For one, when I tell my friends that I work with children, I have to expect that I am going to be called P. Diddy, okay? It's just a fact of life at this point, okay? I need water to stay alive, I need to breathe oxygen, and when I tell my friends that I work with children, they're going to call me Diddy. Those are three constants in my life that will never go away until I don't work this job anymore. I do have my mental and workplace strategies to make sure I keep this non-Diddy reputation, though, right? Because here's the thing. If I am trying to make myself appear as more of a father figure to these kids, for example, I don't know, man. That kind of has a little bit of a twisted thing to it, right? So instead, I go for an older brother type thing, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that whatsoever. I have this overwhelming idea that I need to be the cool one, right? The cool adult, the one that they can come to and start roasting, right? Because here's the thing: if you insult me, I'm gonna insult you back, all right? I'm gonna hit you way harder, okay? And no, I do not mean physically. And obviously, what I say and do depends on the age group I'm working with, right? I have worked from kids age kindergarten to all the way up to their senior year of high school, okay? I have a very wide range of kids that I work with. And I, of course, am approaching each age group a little bit differently than others. You know, it's just a fact, right? I'm not gonna treat a sophomore in high school like I treat a second grader, right? That there's two very different ways to talk to those kinds of people. It's hysterical to me, too, because there's such a wide range of personalities within different age groups. Like, just to give context, I work for a theater company, a youth theater company, and one of the places that we all meet, where all the classes and rehearsals are and everything like that, is in a big studio with a bunch of props, okay? We have foam balls, we have exercise balls, we have sticks, we have all these amazing, fun, wonderful things that we use for games and for shows and things like that, right? When I am working with my high schoolers, my teenagers, so to say, they love to walk around our little studio, pick up the props, and just start chucking them at each other, right? There's no maturity there, and it's ironic because you would think this is what I would have to do with my younger ones, and, you know, sometimes I do, obviously, because curiosity, but there are multiple second graders in which I can have a fully mature conversation with, okay? During football season, there is a whole-ass second grader that I can talk to and have an intelligent conversation with about my fantasy football team. As a matter of fact, she picked my starting lineup one week and helped me win that week, okay? There is not a single one of my teenagers that I would trust with that, okay? Not a single one. And yes, every age group has their struggles, but I try not to be the person that raises their voice and starts yelling, okay? Nobody likes that, and nobody learns that way, I don't think, right? So instead, I'm like, hey, you know, let's not, you know? Like, I have a lot more of a sarcastic approach to that, and honestly, they respond to it for the most part, anyway. And that approach of being more of a laid-back, sarcastic kind of guy I think it definitely helps me feel a lot more comfortable with working with them, you know? That being said, I fucking suck at my job, okay? I am not good at my job. I think the reason for this is because sometimes I'm a little bit too casual, and I'm a little bit too sarcastic, and I'm a little bit too, on their level, so to say. There are a lot of times when there is a trouble with authority, so to speak. And listen, I'm not one to complain, okay? I'm not setting myself up in a way to be an authority figure, right? And almost, I would argue, by intention, right? I'm not intending at all to be an authority figure. Regardless of what I intend, though, and what I want, I am an authority figure because I am a person who works at this company, and my job is to make sure that things get done, and it gets done safely. And let me tell you, by accident, I make my other coworkers' jobs really, really difficult. I was working on a youth production recently, and my name is Mike, obviously, and one of the kids goes, "I'm going to call you Microphone." And then another one says, "Oh, wait, you look more like a Will. I'm going to call you Will." And then another one says, "No, you look like a Ronald because you look like Ron Weasley from the Harry Potter movies." And this began to spiral, okay? And so all of a sudden, my name to these children becomes Will Ronald McDonald Microphone, right? And that's the sort of that's the sort of behavior that my boss and my coworkers don't really appreciate because it gets them a little bit riled up, you know? It got so bad at one point that they were all gathered up on stage one point chanting my name, Ronald McDonald Will Microphone, at the top of their lungs, and it was almost impossible to get them to quiet down. It took a whole, 5.5 minutes to get them to be quiet, and we had a show to do in 30, so there was not any time for shenanigans. But yeah, like I said, I try not to have a stick up my ass, because at the end of the day, they're kids, they're trying to have a good time, and honestly... the only things that we really remember from that age are the really bad experiences and the really good experiences. And I don't want to create any of those really bad ones. You know, I want to create good experiences. I want them to look back fondly when they were 7 or 8 years old chanting Will Ronald McDonald Microphone at some random dude who was working at the company they did. I mean, that's fun, okay? I would have loved that when I was a kid. And it may be a little bit of a pain in the ass to manage at times, but I mean, it's all about the kids and it's all about the memories, you know? But then you have certain individual cases that really make you want to rip your hair out, and not for the reasons you would think. I'll be the first to admit that children can be frustrating, right? There's no doubt about that. I've had a couple of kids who just really irritate me and rub me the wrong way, you know? I've had kids that really irritate me. But sometimes that irritation comes with laughter, because some of the shit that these kids do is hysterical. I'll give you a perfect example, right? I was directing a production this year, and this one kid, who we'll call Mark, Mark was what I like to call my punishment for being what I was to my teachers when I was his age. Mark was a kindergarten boy who was acting in our little production, and the problem was he can't read. Now, you may be asking yourself, if you're unfamiliar with children's theater and theater in general, how is that bad? How is him not being able to read bad? Well, you know, he has a script that he has to learn, right? So if he can't read the words that are on the script, how the hell is he supposed to do the show, you know? So we have protocol for this, because it's not uncommon for us to have children that can't read. We are working with really young kids after all. And the whole protocol is the director, me, will say the line to the kid, and then they'll say it right back to us. And, you know, these kids who are the ones that can't read, they don't usually have many lines to memorize anyway, so at most we're doing this 3 times an entire show, right? So, anyway, I'm in a rehearsal with Mark and 3 of his castmates, and we're doing a little scene, and Mark's character only spoke in short, choppy utterances, like, you know, uh-oh, or here they come, or, you know, something like that. So the time comes for him to say his line in this scene. And let me break down what I'm looking at right now, okay? I am looking at a kid who is barely knee height, right? Barely knee height. And mind you, I am only 5'9", 9, okay? So this kid is small as hell. He has his hair all gelled back. He's got those thick, bubbly glasses, and he's wearing a college sweatshirt, right? It's not like from an actual college. It just says college on it, right? That's what we're dealing with. And he's standing there on our little Fugazi stage, holding his script, of which he can't read, but he insisted on holding, and he's holding it upside down. The kid is holding the script completely upside down, and it's also completely covering his face, so everything that he says is completely muffled. So it comes time to say his line, and I say, hey, Mark, it's time for your line. Your line is, uh-oh, okay, can you say it back to me? And this kid, with his whole chest, he goes, uh-oh, butt, fart, and poop. Now listen. I consider myself a pretty mature person, okay? I'm a 22-year-old man. You're not going to catch me laughing out of context at butt, fart, and poop, right? But when you combine every single factor that I just listed to you, this was the funniest. It took every ounce of my being not to be on the floor laughing. And it didn't help that his castmates who were all there also were on the floor laughing. So all of these kids are laughing at this golden comedic moment, and I have to be the adult and say, hey guys, let's bring it in. Now at the end of the day, we finished the scene and everything was fine, right? But here's the problem. This established our little friend Mark as the cast comedian, and everyone was going to be watching his next move for the rest of the rehearsal process. Not just for that day, not just for that week, but for the entire rehearsal process of 6 full weeks, right? and watch they did. This is more or less an after-school theater camp, right? And the reality of it is that it's mostly girls doing this, right? In the cast that Mark was in, I think there were 3 boys, including himself, and the rest were girls, and it's a cast of 20, right? So we're looking at about a 3 to 17 ratio here. Regardless, all 19 of his castmates were all waiting for his next move. And one day, Mark decided that he was going to come into rehearsal with a fascination of taking off his shirt. Now listen, it is not uncommon for children to pick at their clothing. Okay, it's simply a fact of life. It is not uncommon for a child to play with their hair or to play with their sleeve or anything like that. Well, this not uncommon thing was something that Mark was very fascinated with this day, right? And everyone is looking at him while he's lifting up his shirt and saying, like he would literally in the middle of rehearsals, group rehearsals, just start saying sounds, right? He would just start going like, you know, like in the middle of rehearsal. And, you know, this would make all the kids laugh and all the adults just like put their put their faces in their hands. So Mark, about like 4 or 5 times, takes off his shirt, just starts making sounds, and he gets put in timeout. He gets put in a little timeout, and he goes with our education director, who's, you know, obviously my boss. She takes him off to the side and says like, hey, you can't be doing this, and she sits with him for a little bit. Little did she know that our friend Mark was going to start an uprising. From the timeout position, he made a bold move that even the bravest generals in all of world history would not have done. He stood up on the chair that he was sitting in and lifted his shirt one more time and let out the harshest battle cry I have ever heard in my entire life. And you know what happened next? The rest of our cast followed suit. Now, when Mark made this coordinated attack, I decided to just turn my back for a little bit because I was just grabbing water, okay? I was just grabbing water. I turned my back to grab water for 5 seconds, and I turn around, and an entire room of 19 kindergarten to second graders have all lifted their shirts up to their faces. I was dumbfounded, and our education director went ham on this issue, okay? It was it was craziness. Our education director decided to give an impromptu speech that is matched only by I Have a Dream and the Gettysburg Address. Okay? She went ham on this speech, and she laid down the law with those kids. And let me tell you, there were no more mistaken shirt incidents in the rest of the show. And I'm very proud to say that. I then go home to tell my mom the story, and my mom was a preschool teacher back in the day. And, you know, I say, like, oh, this kid Mark, like, he was lifting up his shirt, and he got the rest of the cast, mostly girls, to follow suit. And my mom leans back in her chair. I'll never forget this. She's sipping on an orange juice and says, this Mark kid is pretty smart. And keep in mind, I said it was a coordinated attack. It was not. Nothing about this was coordinated, okay? Mark had a control over his fellow classmates that I have never seen before. But here's the thing. When these kids actually decide to team up, they are evil fucking geniuses, okay? I remember we were doing a show fairly recently. We were in the theater, we were doing the show, and we were teaching them the staging and like where to stand and doing the lights and everything like that. And there was one part of my job was being off stage and keeping track of a little plush that we needed for the end of the show. And this plush is very important to the plot. Nothing's really going to make sense without it. And here's the problem. Every single kid in that cast wanted that plush. So I was the brave soul that had to keep it safe. And let me tell you, that was the worst decision my boss has ever made. I thought I had it all figured out. There was a little ladder against the wall off stage where I was standing. And I put it on the top rung of the ladder because there was no way that those little bastards were going to get up there, right? So as long as I kept my eyes on the ladder, everything was going to be fine. Until two youngins decided to team up and get that plush. Part of my job when I'm off stage is having a script with me, and if any of the kids forget a line or need to know what's coming up next, they can come to me, and I will help them figure it out with the script, right? And this is something that happens very often, right? Because they're kids, they're not going to go out of their way to remember the whole show. So it's very common that a kid will come up to me and say, like, oh, what's my next line? Oh, when's my next scene? And I will help them because I am a helpful, good person. But my helpful attitude was taken advantage of. One of the kids, who was a bit of a troublemaker, but I'm never gonna not help a kid because they're a troublemaker, she comes up to me and she says, hey, I don't know what my next scene is. Can you help me figure it out? And I say, sure. So we're flipping through the script, and I take my eyes off that ladder for fucking half a second. Half a second, I take my eyes off the ladder to help this poor little girl. And turns out, her little partner in crime, while I am helping her figure out the script, is halfway up the fucking ladder trying to get the plush. So yes, by the time I notice that she is there, she is halfway up the ladder on her way to the plush. And here's the thing, it's not exactly a high place, but God forbid she drops and hits her head or something. We have a situation on our hands because there is also a show happening on the stage at this exact moment. All of this is happening while a performance is happening live. And I am presented with a huge, major dilemma. Here's the thing. At the theater that I work at, the offstage area isn't necessarily hidden from the audience, okay? The big rule is that if you can see the audience can see you. And I can see, like, the first 3 rows, right? The first 3 rows of the audience. Now, you're probably wondering, what's the big deal here? Well, the big deal is that sitting in the very front row, very visible by me, which means they can see me very clearly, is the girl on the ladder's family. So in my mind, I'm thinking, if I pick this child up off the ladder and put her down, there is a real possibility that her family sees me at the wrong time doing the wrong thing, right? So I try and make it one big, swift movement. I get her, I grab her, I bring her off the ladder, and I bring her on the floor. And I look up, and her family is looking directly at me, laughing hysterically. I was relieved, because in the half second it took me to process that they were laughing, I thought my career was over. I thought I was finished. I genuinely thought I was finished. And listen, I'll be the first to admit, I may have been over-exaggerating the fear of the situation. I may have been over-exaggerating the potential consequences of the situation. But the fact of the matter is, in that moment, I was terrified that this family thought I was going to do something bad to their daughter. Okay? That is the fact of the situation. In the end, though, we all had a good laugh about it. I caught up with them backstage. They thought it was hysterical. I explained the situation to them, and they told her no more ladders, no more climbing on things, which was great. We all learned something that day. All this to say, I love my job. I love every second of it. I love getting to be an educator. I love getting to just hang out with the kids and make jokes with them, and hopefully be a positive influence both in the memory department and in a behavioral sort of way. I love kids. I mean, I love working with kids. I love working with them. Please, no.
Don't you notice